readers, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys. And today we are talking about Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. Now, about a month or so ago, I had another book talk on Celeste. We talked about her book, Little Fires Everywhere, which is her more recent release. This one here is her debut novel that came out in 2014. So while I had been reading Little Fires Everywhere, I took to Amazon and ordered this one because I knew I needed to read it. And you guys, I think I love this one even more. It's so good. I love when you find a new writer or new to you writer that you just resonate with and you love the voice of so much, and Celeste has really been that for me recently. So, Everything I Never Told You. This book centers around a Chinese-American family living in Ohio in the 1970s. The dad, James, is Chinese. The mom, Marilyn, is American. And they have 3 kids. There's Nathan, the oldest, Lydia in the middle, and then the baby of the family is Hannah. And when we meet them, Nath is getting ready to head off to college. Lydia is about 16 years old, and then Hannah, she's a few years younger than the older two. It was kind of like the two of them, and then kind of later Hannah. And this book is another one of those books that packs a giant wallop of a punch in the very first few lines. For this one, it begins like this. Lydia is dead, but they don't know this yet. So as I just told you, Lydia is the middle child, and she's 16 years old. So that's how the book starts off. And at first, you're not sure. You're not sure if is this going to be like a literary thriller type book. And it isn't, which I was pleased about. It's more of a portrait of a family. And while we're waiting throughout the book to find out why what happened to Lydia happened, and what happened is she drowned in the lake in town, which was really off-putting to everybody, especially because she didn't know how to swim. She had never taken swimming lessons. Her parents are adamant that she would have never, ever gone to the lake in the middle of the night unless she had been forced to go there. So that's kind of what we're left with at the beginning. Lydia has drowned. We don't know why. And what happens next is we start to unravel this family, peeling back layers of who they are. We begin, because it's important to know, we begin to learn about James and Marilyn, the parents. We learn about how they met. Marilyn went to university. She had very high expectations of becoming a doctor. And her mom's, the big tragedy in Marilyn's mom's life was that she had this empty home. Her husband had left her. She just had the one child. She had this empty home, and she was just kind of stuck in dreams of what could have been. And so she starts to project those dreams onto Marilyn, and she's like, you're going to go off to college and yeah, do your doctor classes, whatever. But what you're going to do there is you're going to find a husband, and it's going to be great, and you're going to have this family that I never had, and it's going to be wonderful. So Marilyn's kind of like, not going to happen, but whatever. And off she goes, and it does happen. She's in a class, and James is the professor. You know, he's young, he's handsome. She approaches him after class one day. They start to talking, and he's like, you know, I can't date you or even have, you know, too much of a close friendship with you because you're my student. So she immediately goes and drops that particular class because she wants to spend time with him. Things progress, they fall in love, and they decide that they're going to get married. And so Marilyn calls her mom and, you know, tells her, I met this professor, we're getting married, we would love for you to come. It's a very small, simple ceremony, but, you know, she wanted her mom there. So her mom comes. Marilyn consciously made the choice not to tell her mom that James was Chinese. She didn't really think it was gonna be that big of a deal, but she didn't want to bring it up over the phone or whatever. Because at this point, when they're meeting and getting married, it's probably the early 50s, so, you know, the racial climate probably, she didn't want to bring it up before she had to. So their mom comes and they pick her up from the train, and they can see on her face that she is visibly disturbed. But they don't say anything really. They just, you know, the mom doesn't really say too much at first, and they go, and before they're set to get married, Marilyn's mom says, this is wrong. This is a mistake. This is wrong. This should not be happening. They get married anyway, and that's the last time Marilyn ever sees or speaks to her mother. The next time she has anything to do with her mom is when her mom passes away and she has to go and pack up the house. So we start to see that while Marilyn is madly in love with James, she's having to put her plans of going to school and becoming a doctor on hold. She's pregnant with their first child, and then she's quickly pregnant with Lydia, and then she tells herself, like, okay, once they're older, I can go back to school. When they start school, I can go to school. And she kind of uses that hope, that dream, to keep herself, you know, afloat when she's mourning the loss of her education. So we know this about Marilyn and James, and then we start to get to know the kids a bit better. We start to get to know Lydia a bit better. We know that Lydia was really smart. She was so smart. She was so eager to please her parents, but especially her mom. She just really, she loved pleasing her mother. And so her mom kind of got caught up in, okay, well, I couldn't do it. Lydia's gonna do it. So the thing that sort of drove her crazy about her own mother, you know, her mother pinning her dreams on her, as much as that frustrated her, now she's doing it to Lydia. It's just the opposite sort of dreams for Marilyn. The dreams were to get a husband and stay at home. Now her dreams for Lydia are to go to school, become a doctor. So Lydia is kind of weighted by those expectations. And then from the other side, there's James. And so James, his parents were like janitors at a school, a private school. And because they were janitors, the people who run the school kind of have this rule that if you work for them and your child can pass the entrance exam or whatever to the school, they can attend it, which is really exciting because, you know, for these families that work for the school, they couldn't afford to send their kids to these schools. And then from the school's point of view, it works out because they get to make the offer, but more often than not, these children, you know, young children of immigrants probably don't know English that great. They very rarely pass the test. But James did pass the test, and he went to school, and he stuck out like a sore thumb. He was the only Chinese person there, the only probably not white person there. And he so badly wanted to fit in, but he never could. No matter how hard he tried, he never could. And so what he projects onto Lydia, especially because for some reason they've got it in their head that Lydia's the one, the golden child. Nath, who is the eldest, he didn't get saddled with it. Lydia did. And so what he's projecting onto, What James is projecting onto her is like, be popular, fit in, make friends. Popularity is important. Make sure everybody likes you. So Lydia is just, she's bogged down. There's a line in the book, I wish I had dog-eared it so I could read it exactly as it is, but it says something to the point of, it's from her point of view, and she says, like, it's painful to be loved this much, or something like that. If I can find it, I'll put it right here. So there's a lot going on for Lydia, when the truth of the matter is, now at 16, she's starting to kind of rebel against, you know, these feelings. When she was younger, she was kind of like, yes, I want to please you. Now at 16, she's kind of tired of it. She's kind of over it. She started hanging out with this kid named Jack, who Nath knows but hates. She rides around in Jack's car with him, smokes cigarettes. She's failing physics. She's really just needing a minute to just be a teenager and not have to be striving so hard all the time to be what her parents want and need her to be. So there's a lot happening. And I don't want to say too much more about the story because there's so much that happens. It's such a crisp, clear portrait of this family. And this family, they are incredibly, incredibly flawed. And I love when characters are written realistically, when they're written as flawed people, because we all are. So it makes it more relatable, and it makes it easier to empathize with. So I am going to give a few spoilers now in a second. Again, not too many, just because we'd be here all day. But if you love stories about family, which I love reading about families, there's such complex things, and each one is so different. I just love reading about them. So yeah, if you love reading about families, if you love just a beautifully written piece of literature, Everything I Never Told You is wonderful. Some of the complaints I saw when I was sort of doing a bit of research about it, because I don't like reading reviews ahead of time before I film my own, because I don't want to sort of get other people's ideas in my head. I like to read them. I read a ton of them afterwards, though. But yeah, because of the way it's sort of framed in the description, like, oh, a young girl turns up dead. What happened? You know, I think a lot of people go into it thinking it's going to be like a thriller or a mystery, when it's really not. It's more of a slow burn through this family's life, through their past, through their present, leading up to just a simple presentation of what happened. So it's not a thriller. It's not a mystery. So as long as you go in knowing that, I don't think you'll be disappointed. So here's where you should leave off. And I'm going to give a few little spoilers to the people who want to know. Okay. So I figure anyone who isn't going to read the book, the one thing you're probably wondering is what happens to her. How does she drown? Was it foul play? Did somebody drag her out there? And the answer is no. The answer is actually a lot sadder. Eventually, the police, not finding any foul play, have really no other choice but to label it a suicide. But we find out that it wasn't a suicide. They're right. There was no foul play. There was nobody else there. It was just her. But it was an accident. She actually gets to a really good place. She comes to terms with her brother leaving, because that had been a really upsetting thing for her. She comes to terms with the fact that he's leaving, he's heading off to college. She comes to terms with the fact that if her parents love her as much as they claim to love her, she should be able to tell them that she isn't going to be a doctor. If she fails physics, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. And as kind of a show to herself of like, I'm gonna make the change. This is new. This is me. I can do whatever I need to do. She rows herself out into the middle of the lake. She stands up and she says, I'm going to swim back in, as like a metaphor for this fresh new start and doing things my own way. It's nighttime. She doesn't know how to swim. And she just doesn't make it. And what's really sad too is that her family will never know that she had been like excited and ready and happy. Her family now thinks, and will forever think, even though it doesn't make sense to them, that this was a suicide. And that's so sad. Although the mom was constantly always rallying against not a suicide. She thinks somebody lured her out there, but either way, like, they'll never know what really happened. And that's kind of sad. But now you know what happened. So, thanks so much for watching, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this. And of course, since it's Friday, let's do a shout out. Today's shout out goes to the Retro Anti-Ager. This is Sarah. She has a lot of really, really interesting and thought-provoking content on her channel. If you are part of the mature beauty community, if you are interested in beauty, anti-aging, all kinds of just really interesting stuff, please go and check her out. I'm sure a ton of you are already subscribed to her, but if you're not, go and check her out and make sure you tell her that I sent you. See you tomorrow, guys.